drawings. And in the end, those are the things that will stand out. So with all of that in mind, are we ready to get started? Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's do it. We're going to start our portrait of Piglet here with a little circle right about the center of our shade. I would say maybe like a little tangerine is a good size name for one of those little cutie tangerines. You can even go bigger than that though if you're trying to fill up your whole entire piece of paper with your portrait of Piglet. But I'm starting right about the middle here with lots of messy, sketchy circles, letting all those lines work together, blend together, to get me a little bit closer to the shape I'm going for. It does not have to be perfect so you can see it. My circle definitely is not perfect. It's getting a little wonky on this side. But that's okay because Piglet's head is not a perfect circle. We're going to be changing up the shape. Before we do that though, I like to add in what's called guidelines. Guidelines will literally help to guide the placement of the features for our drawing of Piglet here. I'm going to start by bringing down what looks like this big backwards letter C, or maybe like a big parenthesis. And it is pulling kind of far off toward the right side of my circle here. You could also think of it as if you are creating in like this little crescent moon on the right side of your circle. Now this is actually showing us which direction Piglet is looking in right now. Which direction do we think he's looking? Right, yeah, he's looking off toward the right side. He's also kind of tilting his head backwards a little bit because Piglet is so small. He's the smallest little character in the 100-Acre Wood, so he's always kind of looking up. Whenever he's talking to any of his friends or Christopher Robin, he's always kind of having to look up to meet their level. So I'm going to add in his eye line with a little bit of a bend as well. This kind of looks like a little rainbow is pulling right across a little bit closer to the bottom of my circle. Get a little bit more space above this line than below. And that's going to be pretty much all the guidelines that we need for our portrait of Piglet, but it is looking absolutely nothing like him. Great imagination if you can see Piglet already. But let's go ahead and start to work on that head shape for him. Like I said, his head is not a perfect circle. He is a baby pig, right? His name is literally Piglet because he is a piglet. So he has these really adorable, chunky little cheeks. Because of the way he's kind of turning off toward the side, we're going to see more of his little chunky cheek over here on the right side. So I'm going to start right at the side of my circle where that guideline is kind of pulling outside my circle. I'm going to bring down this little half rainbow or half hill shape, pulling that out and down to the bottom of my paper. And then I want to continue that down with a diagonal line, pulling that in towards my center guideline as I go down. So it almost kind of looks like this little candy cane curve or like an upside down letter J that I'm adding in towards the cheek. We can also frame out the back of his head shape by hopping over here towards the left side of our circle and bringing down an even softer curve. This one barely is bending at all. But you can see I'm stopping this line a little bit higher on the left side than the line on the right. Because I want to go back in here and connect these two together with a little letter U shape. That's going to show us where the bottom of his neck is and kind of where the top of his little onesie that he wears starts. So you could even sketch in a little bit of his onesie if you really want to. It's up to you. But as of right now, we're not going to change anything else about the shape of Piglet's head. So I'm going to start to go back in here and really lock in my favorite lines on the shape of his head. If you've never drawn with us here before, when we say locking it in, that is really just a fancy way of saying that we're going back into our drawings, taking our favorite lines and making them nice and dark so that they really stand out super bold above all of those messy, sketchy lines that we started with. Although this is actually the only place in the entire Disney Resort, you are encouraged to be a little bit sketchy. That's right. As we're starting to lock in our lines here, though, I want to talk a little bit more about this character because he is a super adorable little character. Like I said, smallest character. He is also the only character of all of the friends in 100-Acre Wood who knows how to read and write. Owl likes to pretend that he can read and write, right? But whenever we look at him and he is holding a book and he's pretending to read, he's always holding his book upside down. That's how we know that he is just pretending. But Piglet, he can actually read and write at an elementary school level. Now that's because he is the only animal who is small enough to fit into Christopher Robin's pocket so he can go to school with him, which I think is really adorable. So sometimes he'll go to school with him and he'll learn all the things that Christopher Robin is learning.
That looks like a loft too.
Now we want to really start to wake up our portrait of Piglet here by giving him those features on his face. I'm going to start with his nose. For really any character, the nose is a great place to start anchoring all of our other features around. And for Piglet, his nose looks like this really curvy little triangle shape. It kind of looks like maybe a little guitar pick or like a 3D Dorito chip, if you remember those. We just want to make sure that while it is triangular shaped, it's very, very rounded. All the edges are really soft. There's nothing super sharp or pointy. Usually we like to save those really sharp, pointy features for our really villainous characters. It makes them look really scary, really evil. Piglet here, he is definitely not evil, right? He is kind of afraid of absolutely everything. So I think if he had any sharp, pointy angles, he might just be afraid of himself. So we definitely want to avoid that. If you're feeling a little fancy with the spices, once you got the shape for his nose in there, you can also shade in that nose since it is that darker shade of pink than the rest of him. And I'm also going to build up a little nose bridge for him by bringing up this little letter C from the tip of his nose back up towards that center guideline. Build up the top kind of bridge portion of his little snout. We can also add in a great big smile for Piglet. When he's not afraid, he usually has a pretty good attitude about things. He usually has like a sunny disposition. So we want to show that big smile for him. I'm bringing across this letter U shape from this bottom left sort of quadrant of my circle. And I'm bringing that right back in until it meets up with the bottom of his nose. This is the way that he's turning his head a little bit. The other side of his smile is kind of tucked behind his nose there. We're not seeing all the way to the other corner. We can go ahead and add in a little smile line to the corner of his smile. That'll really show his cheek being pushed up by his smile. You could totally leave Piglet like this, but usually in animation, we like to really exaggerate those features and expressions for any character. So if a character like Piglet here is happy, we're going to show that he is really, really happy. There is no mistaking that he is any other emotion other than happy. So I'm going to bring down another letter U shape to really exaggerate that expression for him. Show that great big smile. This one I'm not bringing all the way across. I'm stopping a little bit short of that nose. We can also add in a little hill right at the bottom, a little rainbow there to show his tongue. We're just seeing a little piece down at the bottom. And we also want to add in just a little chinny chin for him, a little sideways letter U shape right below his smile there to show his little chin. It's not super defined, again, because he is so small, he's so baby, he's still kind of growing into those features. Now, another thing that is really adorable about Piglet actually has to do with his eyes. Now, as we mentioned, Piglet is one of these stuffed animal characters who lives in the 100-acre woods. Do you guys know what they have for eyes? What those stuffed animals have for eyes? Buttons, yeah, they have those cute little button eyes. So that's what we're going to give to Piglet here. Now, all of these stuffed animals in the 100-acre woods, so with the exception of one character, actually have these little button eyes. And usually that's how we can tell the difference between the stuffed animal characters and the real animals. So the animals like owl, rabbit, and gopher that have those more realistic eyes, they are those real animals. The only exception to that button eye rule is going to be the one and only Eeyore, of course. He just has so much emotion. I feel like he needs to be able to express all that emotion, and he just doesn't quite be able to do it with just those little button eyes. But Piglet here definitely has those normal little button eyes. So I'm giving him these small little ovals and just shading them in. The one on the right is kind of tucked a little bit behind the bridge of his nose, so don't be afraid to only put in like half of that oval. And we also want to give Piglet some eyebrows as well. Piglet was kind of cursed with the early 2000s pencil thin brows. So we can go back up here about halfway between the shape of, or the top of his eye and the top of his head. Just add in some pretty thin little rainbows. Don't want to go too crazy with it. And at this point, he's looking like Piglet the seal, or I don't know, something. He definitely needs some ears though to look like Piglet himself. So we want to give him those great big ears. This is another one of those features that just feels a little bit too big for him because he is still growing into those ears, really showing that he is so small and young. So I'm going to start over on the left side of his head shape here and bring up this big letter C. Pulling up this letter C up towards the top of his head and off towards the right. I want to close off letter S. You can also think of this as like the tip of a flame, maybe. This is a big stretched out letter S curve. His other ear is going to be the same shape and pointing in the same direction. Normally, Pig's ears kind of point in towards each other when they flop in, but if we were to draw Piglet with both of his ears pointing in the same direction, we tend that he sort of starts to look like he's got horns. He kind of looks a little bit like Maleficent. And unless he is dressed up in a Halloween costume, you probably want to avoid that because then he might just be scared of himself. So go ahead and sketch in again that same letter S shape to close off the right side of his ear over there. And I'll lock those ears into place as well. I want those to be a nice permanent part of our portraits of Piglet. Now really anything else you want to add into your drawing of Piglet is going to be extra credit, totally up to you. You could give him a little scarf. Sometimes he wears a little scarf along with that little onesie. Especially for a blustery day like today, that would be very fitting. So you could give him his little scarf. You could draw maybe some leaves blowing around in the background. Maybe it's raining in the background in your portrait. Match the weather. It's really up to you. The very last mark that any artist absolutely needs on their drawing, though, is going to be your signature. So you make sure that you find somewhere to sign your drawings nice and proud, because you all just completed your very own portraits of the one, the only, the adorable little piggy. It's Piglet. Now, in the end, I want to know, everybody, how did we do? All right, we got some goods, and we got a lot of people who are so focused out there, putting in the finishing touches. We got a lot of Picassos. I like it. Well, how about this? More importantly, did we have fun? Yes. Awesome. All right, that is the best part about rough sketching anyway. And before we go, I'd love to see how all of these portraits came out. So on the count of 3, we're going to have a little art show. Whether you're done or not, I want everybody to flip those drawing boards around and show off those drawings nice and proud, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3, Piglet! These are looking so adorable. We're showing the ears down here in my front row. Really cute with the little scarf. I love it. They're showing the big smile.